In this video, we're going to have a look at the pericardium. Now, the pericardium is a double-walled sac that surrounds the heart and is made up of a few layers. Now, let's start with this diagram. So looking at the diagram, we can see we have the heart here, and we are surrounded by membranes. Now, let's start to put some names to these and start to describe some of the functions. Well, first of all, why do we have this double-walled membrane around here? First of all, it helps to compartmentalize the heart because, of course, it's sitting in the thoracic cavity surrounded by things such as the lung. There's great vessels going by it. And of course, one of the most obvious reasons we have it is because of the function of the heart, which is the expansion and contraction. So this helps to really reduce friction for the heart as long as it's in its normal and has its normal anatomy and physiology. Now let's start with the layers. So when we look at here, we can actually add a layer to this, and I'm going to add a layer on the outside. On the outside, we have the fibrous pericardium, and I'm just going to draw it all the way around here. And with a name like fibrous pericardium, you can probably already start to get a sense as to what its job is. It really is to anchor the heart. So it anchors it to surrounding structures. The other reason to have the fibrous pericardium is it really prevents the heart from over expanding. So it does put limitations on that expansion of the heart. So that's the superficial fibrous pericardium. Now as we go deeper, I'm just going to remove it. I'm just going to remove that. As we go deeper, we're going to have this doubled membrane that is deeper to the fibrous pericardium, and this is part of the serous pericardium. And here we have two layers. We have the parietal layer. So the parietal layer sits just deep to the fibrous layer. And then we have the visceral layer. Now, the visceral layer is the layer that sits right on top of the heart. Now, this visceral layer has a second name that often it's also known as the epicardium. So we have the parietal pericardium, we have the visceral pericardium, and the visceral pericardium can also be known as the epicardium. Now, if we go deeper, we start to work our way into the actual heart muscle, the myocardium of the heart. Now, there is another layer that we should consider, and it's not on the outside, it's on the inside. And this is a layer that lines the inside of the heart, things such as the ventricles. And this is the endocardium, and the endocardium will also line things like the valves and areas around valves, etc. Now, the endocardium, from a clinical point of view, is, of course, prone to infection and inflammation, and that's endocarditis that you may hear of. So, we have the outer fibrous layer, just deep to the outer fibrous layer. We have the parietal pericardium. Then we have the visceral pericardium, which is also known as the epicardium, and then we have the cavity, and the cavity has a little bit of fluid inside to reduce that friction. Now, if we look carefully, we can see that these layers fold back on themselves. In many ways, here's the analogy that's often used to give you sort of that mental image as to how these membranes really exist in a relationship. And that is, imagine if you had a balloon that was partially filled full of air, and you can push your arm down into it, your hand into it. You can see how it folds back on itself, because really the visceral, remember, also known as the epicardium, will fold back and becomes the parietal pericardium. So that's a little bit about the membranes that surround the heart.